we are moving on here with issue 300 of Uncanny X-Men. And I'm glad that I have the original. If you have never seen it, it is a gorgeous chrome, I guess you say chromium cover. It's reflective. Just this pales in comparison, but I figure we have the collected trade. So let's dive into it. And this is one of these anniversary spectaculars. Now, with the anniversary spectacular, I'm going to say, even in 1993, the artist in this book kind of irks my Girk. I mean, I respect the man, but let's get into it. We'll talk about the plot, and then when we get to the title page, I'll talk more about it. But what I like about 300 is it brings Nightcrawler back into the fold, because after the fall of the mutants, I think it was after the fall of the mutants when the X-Men were presumed dead, Kitty and Nightcrawler were not with the team, and they ended up going and starting Excalibur with Rachel and Captain Britain. I cannot remember the girl's name. I don't remember. So he says, I suppose I should be annoyed at the professor, assuming I would drop everything, as though I don't already have my responsibilities as leader of Excalibur. And up to this point, and this is why I give credits to Scott Liddell for carrying the X-Men franchises, he picks up a lot of the parts that Claremont had built along the way of Kurt being part of Excalibur. And then, of course, Claremont creating the relationship between Forge and Storm and their eventual fallout when Storm finds out that he was the one that created the gun that was meant for Rogue. But when they shot, Rogue sacrificed herself, and that's how she lost her powers for the longest time, which, I don't know about y'all, but in my personal opinion, Storm being the leader of the X-Men without her powers was one of those times you could really see her as a kick-ass leader. I mean, she took on Calypso and was deemed the leader of the Morlocks, and a lot of people respected her. And that's why when they started doing the gold and the blue teams, I could see why she deserved to be the leader of the gold team. So he meets up with Forge and he goes, "Was? Save this to both the effort and hold that pose until I've completed this final configuration. Caution is admirable, Forge, but rest assured it is me, Nightcrawler. Easily said, not as easily proven." And here's where I again say how Liddell carried the X-Men, because he says the mutant called Forge was born a creator, blessed with an inventive ability that had gone far, far beyond that of genius. In this case, he has created a containment gun capable of enveloping a target in a restraint cocoon. Unfortunately for Nightcrawler, he is not without his own genetic attributes. The crackle of flame, a burst of brimstone, a sudden implosion of air washing in to fill the void are all the manifestations of his ability to teleport from one place to another. It's me, mein Freund, or have you always been this tense and I just simply never noticed? I say that because Claremont always explained the X-Men's powers, and not jokey how some of the more recent books are like Wolverine's a cranky head. Da, 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 da. Claremont always respected the characters and treated them like real people and always explained their powers. So again, if this is your first book, you understand their powers. So right off the bat, if you never read an X-Men book, you understand Forge and Nightcrawler's powers. And Forge says, "Listen closely, Nightcrawler. I only have time to go over this once. There's a 60-mile dead zone here along the northern coastline of France, an unnatural phenomenon Cerebro's mutant detecting sensors can't penetrate. When Xavier arrives, assure him this portable booster unit he requested should help identify the source of the interference." You're leaving? Any technology of hiding mutants is probably as adept at locating them. The fewer mutants in the area, the better. The less chance you'll be detected. And what of it? This would not be the first time you and I have faced. I'm not an X-Man, Kurt. Not anymore. I came here tonight strictly as a favor to Xavier. You want to fight the good fight? Enjoy yourself. I prefer to live in the real world. So I brought up all that history to say this. Forge essentially kind of, I don't remember what issue it was. It was like it was shortly after Bishop arrived, but Storm and Forge were essentially going to try to rekindle their relationship. So Claremont picking up that plot point. But Forge essentially proposes to her, and he finds out that Storm's more married to the X-Men. And we get more into it here, but I just wanted to kind of lay down why I thought that was so important and why this still reads like the comics that a lot of us grew up with in the 70s and 80s until he left. Because you think about it, anytime the X-Men are referenced in newer media, from Evolution to Wolverine and the X-Men, the animated series. It's always Claremont stories, and then stuff that Kirby and Stan Lee and all the others that came before. Those are just kind of lightly nodded at. And then we open up to this gorgeous splash page. And this is where I wanted to talk about why I respect this artist, but sometimes he can really drive me up the wall. So this is Legacies. This is Scott Liddell writing, John Romita Jr. penciler, Dan Green inker, Chris Ianopoulos doing the lettering, Steve Buccoletto doing the colors, Bob Harris editor, and Tom DeFalco editor-in-chief. So big names on the book, but John Romita Jr., should I say, not senior. I can respect his artwork. I just looking at it here. So let's look back at 298, where Brad Peterson, is that his name? I can't remember off the top of my head. Where the characters look more realistic. The anatomy looks right. The head looks oval shaped, and it kind of has that Marvel way. I mean, look at even the way that this gentleman here in the silhouette looks correct. My first exposure to John Romita Jr. before I really got deep into comics was Kick-Ass. And I think that's the crux of my argument is Romita can do great street characters. And, he's even said that for drawing Daredevil to him is a treat. And it works for those characters, oddly enough. But I do not enjoy when he does bigger names like Batman. His Superman run was hard to get through. And it's just because it's boxy. Everything looks boxy. Now, could I do better? Probably not. But I've read enough comics to at least show what I enjoy. And the boxy look to me just really feels like it just takes away from the dynamicness of something like these. That's just me. But I'm used to the characters looking more realistic. So this is a very stylized choice that Romita does, and it's hit or miss. For this, it's okay. I mean, Romita had been drawing X-Men for a while now, and his early 80s stuff was okay. You can kind of see that he's I don't know if this is because he just wanted to get it done quicker. You guys know, let me know. But his earlier stuff with Claremont and Uncanny X-Men was all right. But as we got in the 90s and onward, it is definitely hit or miss for me. But here, at least looks good, and it's beautiful. I just kind of wish that they would have kept Peterson as the artist of this time, because it just, to me, looks absolutely gorgeous. But again, it is what it is. And I guess, 300, they wanted a bigger name, John Romita Jr. being one of those. That's what we got. Coloring, inking looks great. I have a certain gripe with Romita's work. But he draws certain characters like Storm here. Whew. Gorgeous. So it says, together with the telepath Jean Grey, the razored wing archangel, Storm, the mistress of the weather, and the indomitable Iceman, they make up the X-Men's gold team. There's a reason Storm is the leader of this faction of the team, not of the least of which has to do with her mutant command of the elements. It takes something less than a conscious thought, and a self-contained hurricane howls from nowhere and vanishes just as quickly. And here, I don't know. To me, that just, what's the Kick-Ass's real name? I can't remember. But the faces always look the same to me. But anyway, at the end of 299, Cyclops tells Jean that they're going to Paris or to France because they believe that's the home base of the Acolytes and they want to take the fight to them. And so everyone's essentially zeroing in on Moira McTaggart's her estate, essentially, because they all want to team up, but she's missing. And that's kind of the heightened tension of the story. And of course, her land is on fire, and Wolverine's just like, now for the good news, people, Moira was never in the fire, but the smell of burnt flesh is distinctive that way. Nonetheless, someone should have thanked us. Someone would have. Nonetheless, someone wanted us to think she's dead. All the more reason to ping, mutant swine. Clear it was they who set the fire. And so all these locals, they want these mutants to leave. And so we get very much kind of a Frankenstein-esque thing of all these mad villagers coming to take them down. And I love how Bishop's just like, we are acting in your best interest. Now disperse this assemblage immediately, or there's no reason, no need to exacerbate this confrontation, Bishop. They have every right to defend their homes from what they perceive to be a threat. We apologize for any inconvenience, good people. We'll be on our way. They're gone, and not a moment too soon. And I love how Wolverine's the one that calls him out. And that's one thing I've always liked about Wolverine is he calls Chuck on his bullshit. Mind control, Chuck. Desperate time, desperate measures. Don't seem like your style. I would have imagined you, Wolverine, more than any of the others, would understand that. Didn't say I didn't understand it, just don't like it much. If it's of any comfort, Logan, I like it. It's just a good little moment. And then we get a flashback with Moira when they were kind of in their early love before he left for the war, and she met her husband, who they birthed Proteus together. And she's like, "You're serious? Of taking? We've been talking about this for years. You're going to start a mutant strike force?" Hardly, Moira. My intent has always been to open a school, a place young mutants could go to learn the use of their genetic attributes, an institute set up to accommodate their unique needs. And I always love when we do flashbacks and they kind of get that sepia look to just let you know that this is a flashback and the change of the comic borders here. Just a nice little hint. And you're just thinking maybe it's Xavier thinking about all this. There's a twist to that, and we'll get into it in a minute. But what I like about what Liddell here does is he talks about the team where it's like, they're only children. I prefer to think of them as impressionable, eager to learn. And so, of course, it's the first generation Beast, Warren, Cyclops, Jean, and Hank. He goes, and these, and we see Peter and Nightcrawler and Storm, each powerful in his or own right. But I believe their international citizenship will complicate things at this point. Should the need arise, I foresee them as the next generation of X-Men. So again, kind of like your first comic to kind of at least let you know where each member sits and how they came canonically into the book. Now, while we're seeing all of this, we flow into Magneto. Moira's talking about how he's back. And we're still thinking we're in Xavier's head. And then all of a sudden we see Magnus. I'm sorry, my Lord Cortez. I'm losing the transmission. And then we segue into a gorgeous splash page, 90s style splash page of the Acolytes hideout. And spoilers, if you don't want to be spoiled, pause this, go read the series and come back, and you're back. You come to find out that the Acolytes have captured Moira, and they're using one of these mutants' powers to essentially take her thought patterns and turn them into visuals so Cortez can kind of see what she knows. And it's just a great little way to segue between what the X-Men are currently doing and what the Acolytes are up to. Now, this one here, Milia, I think is her name. I don't remember what issue it was, but there was a flashback that Liddell did where we find out that she was one of Xavier's first students, and she left because their points of view essentially conflicted. And I don't remember what issue that was, but I can see why, in hindsight, why that was important coming into Fatal Attractions with the Acolytes. And then while we're at this, we see all these Acolytes, large and in charge, gorgeous artwork by Romita. I'm not going to lie. I'll give credit where credit's due. But then we see this one guy here, and he's just very like Toad-like, very subservient. You can see that he's having a hard time holding all the dishes. And it's such a nice little way that it doesn't seem important, but it is. And we'll get into that. And I love how Cortez is just like, don't ever question me, Voight. Ever. For the moment, Dr. Taggart. And Cortez is such a dick, but he's one of those characters that you love to hate. And that's why I'm on the fence about picking up the Marvel Legends version of him. I want him because Cortez was a threat to be reckoned with back in the day. But I don't want those hard plastic capes. I hate those so much. I wish Hasbro would get on the times like McFarlane. Let me know if you guys think I should review it or not. I'm very much. So, going back into it, again, we just see this dude subservient in the background, get ready to feed Moira. As their argument rages, the young man is ignored by the higher members of the order. Were he allowed to speak, the young neophyte might question their actions. The man he has chosen to follow, of his own free will, and no great love of humans true, but Magnus understood what it meant to extend kindness, not excluding one's enemies. He once wrote, even the flies should feel at home, even if that home is a castle. So I love how the memories brought us into the Acolytes hideout. And as we're using the analogy of what Magnus had taught them, we slowly come back out to show the wide shot of the villain's hideout. That is a great use of narrative and visual storytelling. Oh, God, I miss stuff like this. Now, while all this is going on, Liddell is also still working other plot points. So you see Peter talking to Stevie. He goes, "How is my sister feeling?" "Ileana is resting as comfortably as possible, Peter. Her cough seems to be breaking up. And the fever, Stevie? Climbing, I'm afraid. I'll keep you posted." "See that you do, Miss Hunter." And then Bobby, remember, he was kind of a hothead. He used to be kind of like Spidey, where his intentions are well, but he would always have a quip, and sometimes it would not land correctly. "Relax, Colossus. I know just how it feels when you're wet. I doubt that you do, Robert." "Pardon?" "I came from a close, loving household, only to have lost each member of my family to one tragedy after another. Ileana is the most important person in my life. Without her, I have nothing. Don't demean my feelings by claiming you understand, for you most certainly do not. Excuse me for caring, Tinhead." And that's a great way to show that there are other things going on besides the main plot. And while everyone's talking about it, Robert's still in the back stewing. Like there's something wrong with being an only child, almost non-existent. His aluminum foil head is gonna be my non-existence when I toss this mega snowball upside his face. It just shows how, because remember, Robert was the youngest of the X-Men, and he used to quip the younger generation. So you just like that again. These characters feel the way they're supposed to, and now they're all getting ready to meet Kurt. Now remember, we had Forge at the beginning of this book, and I'm trying to, yeah, here. So this is where we kind of bring in Claremont's old plot points. Except for Bobby's muttered ramblings, the cabin falls silent at the mention of Forge's name. For though no one would dare to mention it unless she brought it up first, there is unfinished business between the Maker and the Wind Rider Storm. And that was another thing, their pet names. They always call each other the Maker and the Wind Rider. I don't know. It's just one of those great little additions to make them feel more realistic instead of just two-dimensional characters on a page. Convinced she can never be a complete person outside the X-Men, Aurora has been waiting for the opportunity. Oh, wait, hold on. I think I missed something. Here it is. Sorry. Got a panel ahead. A short while ago, he'd asked her to marry him, to leave the team that had become her family. Her decision was taken out of her own hands when he retracted the proposal, convinced she could never be a complete person outside of X-Men. Aurora has been waiting for the opportunity to convince him, and perhaps herself as well, that he was wrong. So they landed to talk to Kurt. He goes, "I'm surprised as you are. I assumed Forge would stay at least until the rest of you had arrived. Yet he bolted out of here as if the Sentinels were Eschitelung." I can kind of speak German, but sometimes I fumble it. Feel free to make fun of me down in the comments. He's like, "Did I just stick my tail in my mouth?" Ha! Not at all, my friend. Tell me, have you been taking care of my kitten? So even though Kitty doesn't appear in this issue, that is a great little way to show how her relationship is with their family. I mean, she calls Colossus little brother, and she's essentially, in a sense, adopted Kitty from the moment that they met. And it's just a great way to bring everyone up to speed on the X-Men. And again, as you can see, as you get into the plot, you can see that Ramita's artwork just kind of just starts to help the story. Just some moments, if you can set it aside, really helps. Now, I love this part because Moira sticks her hand through her prison, grabs Cortez's ponytail, which reminds me of The Incredibles, where it's like, "No capes." I cannot remember her name, but I bet she would also say, "No ponytails." Wouldn't want to argue with you, huh, Fabian? Not you, the man who murdered Shut Up Woman. They'll kill us both. No one is interested in your lies. It's the truth, Cortez, remember? I was there too when enough, human sow. You've abused the modicum of courtesy I've extended. So you can see how Fabian's trying to walk this very thin line between dominating the acolytes and also trying to do the upstarts. Now, Neophyte, he starts to kind of build a rapport with Moira. "I'm not allowed to speak to you." Is that they're afraid of a mere human? See the way you look at him when you think no one's watching? In your own heart, you know he's lying. Lord Cortez was with our savior at the moment of his death. Magnus entrusted him with the. One ask, don't you wonder? Cortez was the last to see him alive. How he managed to escape. It's died. They so loved Magneto they gave their lives so the word might reach the children of the Atom who and sacrifice themselves. Cortez left them to die. Nine! I will not listen to your lies another moment. And he just bails. And I just love that because it just essentially rocks his faith. And it's just a great way to start causing infighting amongst the bad guys. There's a great moment with Archangel, which I don't want to get into. But I do love how, what's this guy's name? The Game Master, is that his name? Hold on. Game Master. I demand an audience. And he's asking why, with all these resources, why he's not been given leadership of the upstarts yet. Because remember, he has this thing going with Fitzroy and Shinobi Shaw. The Game Master is kind of like keeping tabs on their little rivalry or whatever. And that's important as we get towards the end of the book. Now we get to the neophyte who finds out Fabian was the one that actually betrayed. I came to hear you deny our lies. Instead, I learned they're all true. What? Neophyte, stand where you are. Two ladies morphing through the wall. You knew he was there, didn't you? Why'd you set me up? The answer should be obvious, Cortez. Anything to keep the game interesting. Otherwise, why bother? So now he realizes that his stakes in the Acolytes can be rocked, which will affect his upstart stuff. So he's what's the word? Shaken down to his core, even though he will not show it. There's a young woman who comes to help Neophyte when he's like face down in the mud. The Acolytes brutal which would be Cortez's royal guards, so to speak, straight up murder the woman. By their very existence, Homo superiors pose a threat to the mutants everywhere. One must reject the other. Ugh, paralyzed by Sayaka's silent whips. Have you been away so long, child, you've already forgotten Magneto's lessons? Why did you have to kill her? She did nothing to you. She was no threat to you, who's of us with those mutant abilities. But rather than talk, they just straight up attack him, and then the battle ensues. It is some great action as everything kind of starts to become to a boiling point. I don't want to go too much into it. I don't want to spoil the book, but it makes Neophyte have to really think about is where he stands and what he thinks. And Xavier actually lends an olive branch to him, and we'll get into that in a moment. But what I like is what's her name? What's this person's name? Jean gets attacked. She goes, "Now hold tight, Moira. I'll have you." Yow! Hide a rudeness. Hide it. First, you crashed the party. Crashed it. Then you try to scoot her off with the host of honor. Look at you. Didn't realize Mephisto had any kids. I just love Jean's little quip there. Sorry, not all mutants are drop dead gorgeous, but my appearance fits my purpose. As Samus Mellowcamp is your worst nightmare. You might believe that, but I've already lived my worst nightmare more than once. Would you like me to share it with you? And this, Ramita did a kick-ass job here of Jean. She goes, in my worst nightmare, I'm just myself. Not the Phoenix, not Madeline Pryor, not even Marvel Girl. I'm just Jean Grey, one of the most powerful size on the planet. The frightening thing is in my dream, I'm not afraid to lose myself in my mutant ability. I cut loose completely. See? Oh, that's my worst nightmare. And that's just a great character moment with Jean right there. Seeing how she's afraid of her own power if she let herself go. And it's just, what do you call it? An opposite of what we all know Jean Grey to be. Now, the character Amelia, I think is her name. Hold on. Xavier says it here in a minute. Amelia, yeah. He goes, I knew it was you, Amelia. Your patterns are unmistakable. Are they, sir? After all these years you spent on your own, because you convinced me you wanted no part in my class of original students. You claimed you had no desire to take sides, and that was when I still had a family, people who cared for me, before I lost everyone I loved. Lost them to the flat scans. That was before I found his. And it just kind of shakes Xavier to his core as everything starts to kind of calm down. This is where Xavier extends the olive branch to Neophyte. If the day comes you choose to stand with us, it must be your own decision. When that day comes, that I can trust again, you'll hear from me. Until then, I'm afraid I must find my own way in the world. For you and Magneto are both great men, Professor Xavier, and your dreams might be more similar than either of you realize. And I just love that it leaves Xavier in contemplation. Oh, God, I forgot how good this issue was. I read it, I was like, damn, this is good. But now going through it with you guys, whew, a lot of information from past plot points that were just funneled into this 300th issue and why it's still so damn good to read while introducing new characters. Great action. And as I said, Romita's artwork can be hit or miss. These opening panels, the more boxy look, sort of chapped my hide, but you can kind of see that he's starting to hit his stride as we get further and further into the book. And maybe you just get used to it, but damn, like right here, oh, excellent panel right there, my friends. So, Uncanny X-Men 300. If you guys have never read this, please rush to your local comic shop and grab this paperback or the individual singles, which I highly recommend for the what do you call it, the holographic cover. Yeah, it was a thing back in the 90s, but still to this day looks beautiful when you display it on a wall or however you want to. If you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little X-Men bell next subscribe, that was making to upload content. You guys get notified. Come to the channel. And I love talking with you on hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, there is an epilogue to this book. I didn't want to spoil it. I want you guys to go check it out. And so with that said, happy hunting, everyone.